We have an intriguing week full of planetary transits. In this week's astrology, Mercury enters Scorpio, producing the need for profound thinking and communication. There will be a bunch of sun transits going on this week, which will help us work on problems with self-expression and unconstructive ego issues. And it's another active week for Mercury transits, which can encourage us to improve our interactions with others. And this is an interesting week because it starts out harsh and rounds out very easily, so for that reason the vibes on the graph are varied, with a mix of complex and harmonious energies. Psychic vibes will be present from the 16th to the 18th, intersecting imagination and confusion, along with solitude. And for this reason, sometimes we might have moments where our logic doesn't seem very accessible. Sometimes we may be leaning on our intuition just a little bit more. We could feel more sensitive to extrasensory things, but also for these reasons, we may need time to ourselves because we feel as though we're picking up on other energies and it could be causing discomfort in that sort of way. That solitude energy continues from the 18th to the 20th with a steady stream of mental energy. So from about Wednesday to Friday, our minds might be overactive and this may require us to need more quiet, meaning we're needing more space to ourselves again because we're trying to sort out our thoughts. So these days could be about taking the time out to ground our energies and really get our minds back in order. But the weekend seems to round things out with only one energy that's complex. There will be emotional sensitivity, but for the most part, we have good luck energy, we have family and friends, we have social energy, and a small amount of solitude. By the time we get to the weekend, we're going to want to shake off some of the harshness of the week and just have a good time, let our hair down, and more or less focus on positivity. And if we felt off kilter or just thrown off our schedule in any way, it'll be a weekend to get back on track and feel a sense of stability. So yeah, this is a fascinating week yet again. Let's look at these next bunch of days and see what we can expect. As a reminder, don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps this channel grow. And if you'd like to support the work of this channel, you could do so by buying me a fresh cup of coffee. There's a link in the description box below. The beginning of the week brings in unpredictability with Mercury making a quincunx to Uranus. And so this may show us where we might not be consistent, where we lack predictability overall. In other words, this is a quincunx, so it can show us where we lack insight, it can show us where we lack balance, and sometimes we may have an erratic style that's disrupting our lives in some sort of way and not benefiting us, but also disrupting the way we communicate with others, which in turn could be affecting our relationships overall. Another way this can show up is by giving us the nudge needed to work on being the most polarizing person in the room. In other words, sometimes an energy like this can point out where we may say the most shocking thing to seem cool or to get a reaction out of others. Also, it could show where we're being over the top with eccentric communication that's off-putting to others. On top of that, Mercury is making a complex alignment to Venus on that day, so this may show where we're over the top when it comes down to relationships. This may show where we need more validation than normal, and that can create some hiccups when it comes down to communication on that day as well, because it really does ramp up attention-seeking energy. Which, of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting attention. At the same time, when we have a complex alignment, it veers on the unhealthy side. So do the best you can when this energy hits, especially with all that erratic Uranian energy that's going to come along with this. From the 19th to the 20th, Mercury and the Sun are going to make a conjunction with one another, but while they're doing that, they're both going to make a quincunx with Neptune. And for this reason, we might have moments where our minds feel mentally sharp and others when we're feeling foggy. So this energy could be vacillating. It could feel as though our moods are up and down, where again, one moment we have a lot of clarity and we have a lot of focus. Then the next, we might be feeling unclear about a lot of things. Because there's some contrasting energy going on, Mercury and the Sun making that conjunction, the Sun making a cazimi with Mercury, a lot of the times that helps us with mental sharpness. It helps us feel like we're running through things, and by running through things, we're able to bust through tasks like a pro. It generally gives us a moment of clarity. It generally helps us with having epiphanies. If we've been stuck on something, we can have that moment where we can have that aha moment with this kind of energy. And generally, it brings in this sense of sureness and confidence within ourselves and healthy ego expression. But with the Neptune stuff, that may make things foggy yet again, that may make us foggy on the details. It may make communication a little bit vague at times. It could show us where we're too nebulous. It could show us where we have unrealistic expectations. and where we're eluded by our own sense of self. And due to that more harmonious alignment, we might have a moment of clarity and realize where we might be self-sabotaging and realize where we're undermining our confidence by unrealistic expectations. And with energy like this, our minds could be in overdrive. And with it being contrasting energy, sometimes that overdrive can be motivating, but other times it may feel overwhelming. So try to cut yourself some slack when energy like this hits. Take a moment, take a break, and come back to things when you feel more mentally clear. And look at ways to ground your energy the best way you can. The day before Mercury goes into Scorpio, we have it connecting with its modern ruler Pluto. And due to Mercury and the Sun being closely connected to one another, the Sun will also be making this square to Pluto. Under this influence, it can make for a challenging day for communication and the way we're thinking, because when we have this sort of vibe, it tends to bring in moments where people try to throw their weight around. In other words, we could be dealing with people who are power struggling, we could be dealing with people who are trying to dominate the conversation, we could be dealing with people whose egos are out there in the quasars, and for that reason, it could feel as though we're going back and forth with people. Some of the reasons this is happening is because we may run into those who are trying to make themselves feel important by putting other people down, and other times we're dealing with people who have strong opinions and they want everyone to hear that strong opinion because either they like the sound of their own voice, which in more cases than none that generally is the case when you're dealing with very opinionated people. And there's nothing wrong with being opinionated, but when I say opinionated, I mean healthily opinionated. This, on the other hand, is very unconstructive and doesn't benefit anyone but the person who is dominating the whole entire conversation. So for that reason, it may be a day riddled with conflict. It could be a day of uncomfortable truths coming out. So whether that's someone revealing someone's business, whether that's someone revealing secrets, whether that's you coming to a conclusion about something or finding the answers to a situation that's been eluding you for a while, this may be a time where you're able to solve that. And it may be uncomfortable in some ways since this is a hard alignment. And since this is a problematic alignment, it's not wise to go back and forth with people. Obviously, you have to assert yourself and stand up for yourself in situations. But with energy like this, it may be a time to wait for the right moment to say something, like when the person has calmed down and you've calmed down, or they just seem less egotistical and you can get a word in edgewise. That may be the time to say something, but otherwise, if you can disengage, if you have the luxury to disengage from these types of conversations, because this all just ends in conflict with an energy like this. By the time we get to Sunday, Mercury leaves Libra and enters Scorpio, giving us the urge to think and communicate more profoundly. As we leave the charming communicative approach of Libra, we shift to a more observant and speak up once you've collected the data points sort of energy. In other words, this is a very calculated energy. This is a very quiet energy. It's not to say we won't socialize, because we most certainly will, but this is the type of energy that takes a nice step back, gets introspective, and speaks up when it's necessary, speaks up when it has all the information. And for this reason, we can find ourselves going inward. It's a time to step back, be more reflective, and examine the things in our immediate environment. That way we can gain a deeper understanding of the world around us, the people around us, what makes us tick, our interactions with others, and other ways to get to the root cause of things in our lives. With a vibe like this, we're more in tune to things that are underneath the surface, whether that's our coping mechanisms, our behavioral patterns, or situations that might be repressed. So over these next 3 weeks, it could be a time where we become more interested in detoxing our minds and discovering ways to transform our mindset overall, especially if there's been something that's been holding us back, especially if we've been stagnant for a while, especially if we just have things that no longer serve us mentally or communication-wise or interactions with others that need to be purged out. So it's truly a time to sit with ourselves and face things that need to be taken care of. That way we can empower ourselves and make the changes necessary to get to the next level in our lives. Another thing with this energy is because our minds are in tune to things that are underneath the surface, we might feel more intuitive than normal. We may be more sensitive to vibes under this energy. And because of this, we're more receptive to our psychic side. We're able to feel things on a raw, extrasensory level. And we might be already feeling energy like this considering Mars is in Scorpio. And then within a few days, the Sun is going to go into Scorpio and we're going to have Scorpio season. So we're going to have all of these planets in this sign. Venus will eventually make its way through there as well, but we will have a bit of a Scorpio stellium going on. So this can really ramp up that psychic energy and those intuitive hits we might be experiencing during this time. With so much scorpionic energy and Mercury being here, we will crave mental stimulation on a higher level. So this is going to be a time where we're seeking more substance, we're seeking more depth in the things that make our minds feel exhilarated. And because of the analytical nature of this, it'll be easier to understand deeper topics. And maybe it's topics that normally you may not have the concentration levels for, you may not have the bandwidth to go there and look at very complex subjects. And very complex subjects being things like astrology. I mean, obviously you guys are listening to this and you're astrology lovers. At the same time, sometimes studying astrology can be difficult. It's one thing to follow your astrology and get your like weekly horoscopes and things like that. It's another thing to actually go in there and get into practice. So this may be a time where you feel like you have the focus to sit through a course or read a book that involves that. And it doesn't have to be astrology. It could be psychology. It could be anything to do with science or mathematics. So either way, this gives you the focus needed to study these types of subjects without losing concentration on them. It could also be a time of doing really in-depth research as well. If there's been something that you've been wanting to understand deeply, and again, maybe you just didn't have the time or the focus for it, this could be a time where you're finding yourself going down a rabbit hole in that way. And you're able to make sense of the complexities of that subject or situation. Socially, because of the considerable need for substance, this is going to be a time where we're going to prefer company with people who can enrich our lives. We're going to not necessarily want to do all the small talk and idle chit chat. We're going to want to have meaningful chats with others. So our mingling sessions with people will be more connective. It'll be about talking about things on a deeper level. And you can't always get deep, but you can't always be superficial either. And this gives us the energy that we need, again, to be able to handle those deeper topics and those deeper subjects. So exchanging with other people in terms of those types of topics or complex things might be easier than normal. And even if you guys aren't talking about that kind of stuff, it could just overall be about having meaningful conversations with people. One of the things with this energy is it is refreshingly truthful. Scorpio energy gives us the courage to look at the truth, even if that truth may not be the prettiest truth in the world. But again, it helps us get to the bottom of things. So this could be a time where you're having more directness from other people, or you're able to get things off your chest on a healthy level, and others are just being more receptive to that. But overall, it's a time to not sugarcoat anything and have more honesty around your communication. Of course, there is a lower vibration with this, just like there is anytime a planet changes signs. And with energy like this, because Scorpio energy feels everything rawly, sometimes it can rev up suspiciousness. So we need to be aware of reading into things too much and being overly cautious, or our minds making up scenarios that aren't necessarily there and creating fear or things like that. And while it's good to have healthy caution and have a little bit of suspicion, it's not great for this energy to get out of control like it can and create moments where we're not trusting other people, which in turn can lead to retaliating, jealousy, pettiness, and a whole bunch of other things that are just not constructive. Because of the focused nature of Scorpio, we need to be aware of overly fixating on things. This could lead to obsession or getting so consumed by a thought or a situation that we're not able to pull ourselves out of it so easily. Another thing with this energy is because of the blunt nature and the honesty that I was talking about, we have to be aware of being very harsh and cutting with our words. On the unhealthy end, sometimes things can slip out and they may not come out nicely. They may come out mean. The great thing with Scorpio is it tells the truth that no one's ready to hear. At the same time, it may not be appropriate at those times. I mean, there's no such thing as good timing, but we are talking about the lower vibration of this. And so that unmentionable situation might end up causing more drama than intended. So use this energy for all of its constructive components and try to be mindful of some of the lower ones. Right as Mercury is entering Scorpio, it makes a constructive alignment with Saturn. And hopefully this energy that we have with Saturn and Mercury and Saturn, will help us work on the peculiar energies that we were experiencing through this week. Under this influence, we could feel more grounded than we have throughout the rest of this week. So it could be a time to get organized. It could be a time to start getting back on track and start making long-term plans for whatever goals you might have. With an energy like this, things tend to go as planned. So if you had something in mind for today in terms of your Sunday fun day, things should go the way they should without too many hiccups and diversions. Communication also becomes constructive under an energy like this, and we tend to focus on situations where we're interacting with others who are worth our time and energy. And one of the cool things about this, on that same day, Venus is going to make a trine with Jupiter, and that should really amplify the good vibes that are going on that Sunday. So this could really get us in the mood to let our hair down after a a rough week. We could feel as though we're ready to mingle with people. We can feel more social. And we can even feel like luck is on our side on that day. So this is very fortunate energy. So there may be opportunities for us to either capitalize on luck, opportunities to be social with the right people, and find things that really put us in a good mood. This also has a component romance-wise. Romance-wise, this could increase situations with over-the-top flirtation and other types of amorous exchanges. And that's not in a bad way. It's in a fun way. It's in a passionate, playful way. So it's great for indulging in romantic scenarios and finding opportunities when it comes down to your love life overall. But with a week like this, try to stay as grounded as possible. At least the weekend leads to something fun and exciting and just allows us to have some positive vibe to soak up after a week that's just so off kilter. Anyway, I hope you all have the best week ever. Later, and see you in the next episode.